Hey guys, tonight we begin with a slow, salty breeze and the faint clink of bronze fittings on timber. You've just arrived in ancient Carthage, not as a conqueror or a merchant, but as a curious wanderer, barefoot and wide-eyed, with sand in your sandals and no particular urgency in your step. The harbor is buzzing, though not in a loud or chaotic way, more like the background hum of a civilization that's very used to being important. Long, lean Phoenician ships bob gently against wooden piers, sails furled and creaking, while crewmen unload amphorae full of who knows what. You catch a whiff, olive oil, anchovies, frankincense? Honestly, it's probably all three, mingling into a kind of ancient Mediterranean perfume that tickles the back of your throat. This isn't Rome. This isn't Athens. Carthage is different, subtle where others are showy, practical where others posture. But make no mistake, it's rich. You can feel it in the stone underfoot, smooth from generations of footsteps, and in the confident way locals barely look up from their business as you pass. One thing you notice immediately: the seagulls here are huge, like absurdly large. One glares at you like it owns a shipping company. You try not to make eye contact, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Always love seeing those. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step further onto the docks, the planks warm from the afternoon sun. The Carthaginian port is orderly but not rigid. Men shout in Punic, Greek, and something that sounds suspiciously like a very angry version of Egyptian. Cargo is logged on wax tablets, then forgotten under a pile of fruit. Historians still argue whether Carthage's famous trade empire was more efficient or just more stubborn than its competitors. Some claim its merchants could outbargain even the thriftiest Greek. Others think the Carthaginians simply wore people down with their sheer love of haggling. You watch as a crate falls open. Dried figs tumble out like sleepy pebbles. A dockworker groans, gestures skyward as if to blame Ball Hammond himself, and casually kicks the figs back into the box. Sanitation might not be top tier, but the vibe? Immaculate. The breeze carries smells, salt, certainly, but also with smoke, roasted fish, and something musky you can't place. You later learn it's murex, the sea snail used for making Tyrian purple dye. It smells exactly like you'd expect a centuries-old fashion statement to smell. There's music too, soft reed flutes and the occasional thump of a hand drum. A child runs by, trailing a linen scarf behind her like a cape. She nearly knocks over a priest, who scolds her in the calm, practiced tone of someone who's been knocked over by kids before. Just beyond the harbor stands a low stone wall, less a defense than a polite boundary. You pass through it easily, stepping into a different world. Sand gives way to sandstone. Pebbles crunch beneath your feet. A camel stares at you for an uncomfortably long time. A man nearby offers you a drink, a cloudy, chilled concoction of fermented barley and date juice. Tastes complicated, like someone tried to make beer and ended up with philosophical tea. You thank him with a nod, and he grins, revealing teeth stained dark from chewing something herbal. He says something in Punic. You smile blankly. He laughs, pats your shoulder, and walks away. Carthage isn't here to impress you. It doesn't need to. You're the guest. The city keeps moving around you, casually indifferent to your awe. The sunlight sharpens the outlines of palm trees along the horizon. Everything is baked to gold. The bricks, the roof tiles, the worn sandals slapping against them. Even the shadows are slow here. They stretch long, lazy, and unbothered. You're starting to blend in. Not quite local, but not lost either. You find yourself walking with a rhythm now, guided by the gentle percussion of a civilization at ease with itself. Off to the side, a street performer juggles clay pots. He drops one, catches it with his foot, and bows dramatically. A polite smattering of applause follows. No one seems surprised. This is a city that's seen better tricks and worse. You pause at a fountain where bronze fish spit water into a shallow basin. A boy dips a fig in it, bites, and nods solemnly, as though conducting a scientific experiment. You wonder briefly if he's about to found an entire school of culinary philosophy. He throws the rest to a passing cat. Even in its smallest corners, Carthage has texture. It hums with quiet confidence, layers of history folded into layers of sandstone. You get the sense that somewhere, beneath your feet, lie older ruins, temples forgotten by time, workshops that once echoed with the clang of metal. There's always another layer in Carthage. And tonight, you'll drift through them all. You leave the docks behind and begin your slow walk into the heart of the city. The stones beneath your feet shift from smooth harbor paving to the more chaotic, cracked variety that suggests major urban planning, eventually. But for now, the streets of Carthage are mostly walkable, occasionally goat-blocked, and always filled with the faint perfume of ambition. This city doesn't do grandeur like Rome, with its flashy arches and overcompensating columns. No, Carthage prefers a quieter kind of power. You walk past low buildings made of limestone and sun-bleached brick, each one crammed with signs of life. Faded fabrics hung in doorways, bundles of garlic, clay jugs with exactly one too many dents to be decorative. From every corner comes noise. Sellers haggling, children laughing, the occasional donkey braying like it's auditioning for a tragic opera. And there's dust. Always, always dust. You start to wonder if the dust is more resident than you are. A woman passes you with a basket on her head stacked so high it's a minor miracle of ancient physics. She moves gracefully, unbothered, as if she's practiced carrying olives, sandals, and probably the expectations of her extended family for most of her life. Around the next corner, a group of merchants wave their arms animatedly over baskets of saffron, dried fish, and a few alarmingly shaped root vegetables. Their conversation is a blend of Punic and Greek, sprinkled with sarcastic laughter. One of them offers you a dried fig dipped in sesame. You take it. It's weirdly chewy and exactly what you needed. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian trade success came from their seafaring skill or their relentless, utterly charming ability to convince people that yes, they definitely needed 12 amphorae of fermented sardine paste. Evidence points to both. A boy runs past, tugging along a wooden cart filled with what appears to be sea sponges and a chicken that seems to be in charge. No one questions this. You step aside and duck into a shaded alleyway, where cool air presses against your skin like a sigh. Here, the city feels older, walls covered in graffiti that might be prayers, poems, or just someone complaining about grain prices. You can't read it, but the emotion comes through loud and clear. People have been frustrated about groceries for at least 2,000 years. A baker steps outside and tosses something small to a waiting dog. The dog, dignified and clearly irregular, catches it mid-air, then licks its paw like it's signing the bill. The bread smells incredible, yeasty, slightly smoky, with that faint citrus tang. Carthaginian bakers were known for thanks to their love of using lemon rinds in just about everything. You reach a small plaza where sunlight spills in like warm honey. There's a fountain at the center, octagonal with chipped tiles that might have once told a story. A few older men sit nearby on benches, draped in loose tunics and the smug quiet of people who retired before retirement was a thing. One of them snores lightly. Another feeds grapes to a bird perched on his wrist. The bird looks like it's seen things. You sit for a moment. Carthage moves around you, not fast, not slow, just steadily, confidently. Somewhere nearby, someone plays a stringed instrument softly, and for a moment you forget which century you're in. This could be any golden afternoon in the city's long, tangled history. Then a camel yells, loudly, from somewhere very close. You stand up and brush yourself off. A passing local smirks and says something in a dialect you don't understand, but the tone is unmistakable. Yeah, they do that. There's a fork in the street up ahead. One path leads to the residential quarters, the other to the market district. You head toward the houses first, curious to see how the Carthaginians lived when they weren't selling fermented goods to unsuspecting Romans. You pass narrow windows carved with lattice screens, tiny balconies cluttered with clay pots of herbs, and doors painted in shades of red and ochre. It's quiet here, intimate, a city inhaling between bursts of commerce. You glance upward and notice small shrines built into corners of the homes, offering bowls, carved symbols, and the occasional feather or coin tucked into a crack. The gods of Carthage aren't loud. but they're everywhere, peeking out from under roof beams and smiling faintly from doorposts. They don't need temples to be worshipped. They have the daily habits of 1,000 citizens to keep them satisfied. You brush past hanging laundry and nearly walk face first into a linen bedsheet. You apologize to the air. A woman laughs gently from a window above and drops a fig into your hand. You thank her. You're not sure if this is flirtation, hospitality, or just Carthaginian habit, but either way, you're not complaining. Carthage isn't showing off. It's just living. And you're welcome to walk along, as long as you don't mind a bit of dust in your sandals and the occasional goat traffic jam. You drift out of the quiet residential quarter and follow the breeze back toward the livelier parts of Carthage. The scent of roasted nuts and sharp vinegar pulls you like a slow tide. You find yourself in the thick of a bustling open-air market, where nothing is arranged alphabetically and everything smells slightly sun-warmed. This is not your modern supermarket. There are no neat shelves or barcode scanners. Instead, sellers shout their wares with the urgency of auctioneers who skipped lunch. A man with a truly magnificent beard gestures at his pile of purple-dyed wool, daring you to not be impressed. It looks expensive. It also smells faintly of sea snails. Fashion always has its price. You duck around a stand of baked goods, flatbreads dusted with sesame, loaves baked in clay ovens, and strange pastries stuffed with figs and something that might be cheese or might be destiny. You take a bite and immediately forget your own name. Is that good? Carthaginian markets are layered like a good lasagna. On the top, you get food and textiles. A level down, there's jewelry, amulets, and finely worked gold that glints even in the shade. And beneath that, tucked into quiet corners and wrapped in silk, you find the real treasures. Rare herbs from Nubia, scrolls written in 5 languages, and small carved idols no one openly admits to owning. You pass a group of children tossing olive pits into a line scratched in the dirt. Their laughter follows you as you wander toward the edge of the square, where an elderly man is selling perfumes. He nods at you solemnly and uncorks a tiny clay vial. One whiff and you're transported: frankincense, myrrh, a trace of citrus, and possibly a hint of old book. You buy it without asking the price. Historians still argue whether Carthage's perfumers were influenced more by Egyptian recipes or local innovations. Some even believe they pioneered early distillation methods centuries before it became popular elsewhere. One scroll even hints at a fragrance made from lotus and crocodile dung. Yes, you decide not to ask which one you just bought. The perfumer gives you a sly smile and hands you a tiny wax tablet. On it, a poem, something about the scent of home and the taste of memory. You nod, unsure what to say. He just waves you off with the benevolence of a man who knows he's going to be remembered in exactly 3 footnotes of history. You move on. Toward the southern end of the market, you come across what looks like a mini amphitheater. It isn't for gladiators, it's for politics. Or more accurately, loud talking with occasional snacks. Carthaginians loved debate, especially the kind that involved multiple languages and pointed finger-wagging. A group of men stand in a half-circle arguing about tax grain. One woman nearby eats an orange and shakes her head. You sit and listen. You don't understand most of it, but the rhythm is hypnotic, like a sea shanty, but with more legislative tension. In Carthage, political power is complicated. There are 2 main officials, the Sephites, who function like judges and administrators, plus a council of elders and several rotating assemblies. This is bureaucracy, yes, but passionate. People care, and occasionally yell about it next to melon carts. You wander away just as someone throws a pomegranate in protest. It misses. Just behind the forum, you spot a tall, narrow tower, one of Carthage's many storage silos. These things are everywhere, squat or soaring, and built to store grain, olives, and salted fish. The smell? Robust, but efficient. You climb a few steps up one of the towers and look out over the rooftops. The city stretches like a sand-colored quilt, stitched together with alleyways and sun-bleached flags. Beyond it lies the shimmering bay, dotted with sails. And in the far distance, on a hazy hilltop, you see it, the Tophet. A hush rolls through your thoughts. This sacred precinct, shrouded in centuries of debate, is part of Carthage's darker myth. Historians still argue whether it was a burial ground for sacrificed children or simply a solemn resting place for the very young and very loved. The truth is tangled, half found in burnt bones, half lost in Roman propaganda. You decide not to go there tonight. Some places ask for silence and sleep. Instead, you return to the street level and turn left at a fountain shaped like a sea monster. Its eyes have been rubbed smooth by centuries of curious fingers. You catch your reflection in the water, ripple-blurred and sun-glossed. You're starting to feel part of the city now. Not just a visitor, but a temporary stitch in its endless tapestry. A priest passes by in a linen robe dyed soft red. He carries a basket of rosemary and barley, and nods at you as if to say, "Yes, you're doing fine." You believe him. You leave the hum of the market behind, and your feet guide you toward the sea once more, not to the commercial docks this time, but to the naval harbor. Or rather, what once was. Much of it is now quiet, silted over with the weight of years and the gentle stubbornness of water. But you can still see the shape of it. The grand circular harbor, the inner island, the whisper of what was once the pride of Carthage's military mind. Here is where the famed Carthge stood, a feat of engineering that even modern architects might pause at, chewing thoughtfully on their pencils. The outer rectangle for merchant ships, the inner circle for warships, all connected with carefully controlled channels. It was a naval base disguised as a calm marina. You can almost hear the creak of galleys and the bark of orders. Almost. And here's where your mind starts drifting, lulled by the salt-laced wind and the gentle slosh of distant waves. Imagine it. Over 200 ships, tucked into private docks, each with its own little workshop built right into the berth. Soldiers drilling on the deck while carpenters patch hulls below. A well-oiled war machine pretending to be a peaceful port. Subtlety was something the Carthaginians did aggressively. Historians still argue how secretive the Navy truly was. Some claim the inner harbor was hidden by massive doors, others that it was simply so efficient no one dared provoke it. Either way, Rome certainly took notice eventually. A bit too much notice, in fact. You stroll past the remnants of stone moorings, now home to sleepy cats and half-dried seaweed. One cat blinks at you, clearly unimpressed by your lack of fish. You apologize. It yawns in ancient Punic and curls back into a loaf. Further along, you stumble upon an old storage shed, its roof long collapsed. Inside, the earth has swallowed most of what once filled it. A few rusted tools stick out from the dirt like awkward weeds. You pull one loose, a copper nail, green with age. It fits oddly well in your palm, like a key to a memory you never lived. Just above the harbor, a worn footpath climbs up a small ridge. You follow it, shoes scuffing against crumbling stone steps. At the top, the city unfolds beneath you. Rooftops like broken shells, courtyards full of drifting music, gulls circling overhead in lazy loops. There's a memorial here now, just a simple column. No grand inscriptions, just a quiet presence. A place to sit, maybe, and remember the parts of history that didn't get a parade. As you rest, you think about what the Carthaginian navy represented. Power, yes, but also fear, pride, necessity, and a kind of silent defiance. Rome may have had legions, but Carthage had the sea, and the cleverness to use it like a blade. Below, a fisherman casts a line from a rocky outcrop, whistling a tune that's probably older than most buildings in your hometown. He glances up, nods once, then returns to watching the water. You wonder how many generations of fishermen have stood exactly there, wondering if the gods were listening that day. The breeze shifts again, carrying the smell of tar and dried kelp, with just a whisper of smoke. Somewhere in the city, someone is roasting something. Your stomach offers a gentle reminder that even in ancient cities, lunch is a priority. But for now, you linger a while longer. The ridge is peaceful. Birds murmur in the dry grass. The sky hangs low, as if it, too, is trying to remember what this place used to be. A group of children pass by on the lower trail, chattering in the musical tones of the modern world. One carries a plastic bottle, another a soccer ball. Carthage is still alive, not in warships or merchant fleets, but in the stubborn rhythm of people who live beside ruins without calling them ruins. You stand, stretching slowly, and begin your descent. On the way down, your hand grazes the rock wall beside the path. Carved into it, faint and nearly lost to erosion, is a symbol, a crescent moon cradling a star. A Tanit symbol. You run your fingers over it, gently, and the stone feels warm from the sun. Tanit, the goddess of the moon and fertility, protector of Carthage. She's everywhere if you know where to look. In necklaces, in mosaic floors, in little charms hidden behind doorposts. You smile. She probably doesn't mind the modern traffic. Back in the harbor district, the world feels busier again. You pass a group of workers mending nets, the fibers dyed a soft brown from local plants. One of them is humming a tune that feels like it could stretch back to Hannibal himself. Minor key, patient, almost hypnotic. There's a tavern nearby, just a low building with a sloped roof and a painted sign of a fish holding a goblet. You love it already. You consider stopping in. But there's still more city to see. You brush the dust from your hands, glance back at the sea, and turn toward the distant hum of temple bells. Carthage is calling you deeper. The bells draw you through a winding neighborhood where the walls lean in close and the sky is trimmed by rooftops. Laundry lines crisscross above you, heavy with tunics, cloaks, and the occasional sock clinging to life by one damp thread. You pass a baker's boy darting between alleys, arms full of warm loaves, chased by a dog with very specific ambitions. The sound of bells deepens, a soft, resonant clang, like bronze sighing. You follow it up a gradual slope until you reach a broad plaza. Ahead stands one of Carthage's great temples, a place that hums with quiet power even centuries after the last formal prayer. Its sandstone facade is half-worn, its columns lean just slightly, but its presence commands stillness. You step inside barefoot now. The floor is smooth beneath you, polished over centuries by soles, sandals, and maybe the occasional curious goat. Candles flicker from bronze holders. The air is heavy with frankincense, sweet and smoky, like warm velvet. This temple is likely dedicated to Tanit, the Carthaginian goddess of the heavens, fertility, and life. She's often depicted as a triangle with upstretched arms, standing between sun and moon. But her power here is quiet. Not thunder or drama, but the slow certainty of soil turning, of tides returning, of breath drawing in and letting go. A priest sweeps past, nodding politely, and lights a fresh taper. You can't help but notice how even the dust motes seem to pause midair, basking in the late light shafting down from a ceiling slit. Historians still argue how the Carthaginians actually practiced their religion. Was it deeply personal? Formalized? Did everyone participate or only a priestly elite? Some clay tablets suggest household shrines. Others hint at more centralized worship. Either way, it feels less about dominance and more about rhythm, of seasons, of lives, of offerings left on thresholds. You wander along the perimeter of the temple, where small niches are carved into the walls. Each holds a different gift: a bunch of dried herbs, a smooth stone, a carved figurine with no face but tremendous personality. One has what looks like a child's drawing, wobbly stars, and something that might be an elephant, or maybe a camel, or possibly both. In the back courtyard, a fig tree leans out of the wall, its branches held up by a network of cleverly placed ropes. A cat naps in its shade, stretched out like royalty. You sit nearby, resting your back against the warm stone. Somewhere nearby, water trickles from a spout shaped like a lion's head. It's not a roar, it's a purr. Above the tree, there's an inscription in Punic, the ancient Carthaginian script. You can't read it, but someone once translated it into a half-faded plaque nearby. She who plants in silence shall harvest in peace. You smile. You don't entirely know what it means, but your bones understand it anyway. A light breeze stirs the leaves overhead. You watch their shadows dance across the stone, and you begin to think that maybe this was the real secret of Carthage. Not its armies or its ships, but this, the way it blended power with quietude, bustle with reverence, trade with trust in the unseen. In the distance, someone calls out, likely a vendor closing up for the evening. You stay where you are a little longer, the fig-sweet air thick around you. Your eyes drift closed for a moment, and you imagine being one of the temple attendants. Your job might include lighting lamps, trimming herbs, and maybe even preparing incense mixtures. There were over a dozen recipes used in rituals, some with local myrtle, some with faraway cinnamon, all designed to coax the gods into listening just a little longer. You imagine the rituals as slow and meticulous, nothing too flashy. Maybe some chanting, definitely some walking in slow circles, and probably a lot of sweeping. Sacred places, after all, must also be tidy. A sudden thought strikes you. What if someone in this very temple invented the idea of sweeping in meditative circles? That's the kind of thing Carthage would do. Quiet genius disguised as housekeeping. You rise, brushing a leaf from your lap, and nod your thanks to no one in particular. Outside the temple, the sun has shifted lower. Shadows are longer now, stretched like cats across the stones. The bells are silent. The plaza has emptied. Even the dog chasing bread earlier seems to have found a dignified sense of purpose. You follow a different path down from the temple, one bordered by planters full of rosemary and thyme, their scents mingling and clinging to your sleeves. A group of women walk ahead of you, carrying baskets and laughing softly. One of them glances back, smiles, and says something that sounds like a question, but you just smile back. She nods, satisfied, and continues on. That's another thing about Carthage. It doesn't ask you to understand everything. It just invites you to walk with it for a while. You find yourself at a small square where an old storyteller has set up his stool. A crowd gathers around him. Children, elders, a few stray goats. He speaks in a sing-song cadence, voice like warm sand, hands painting pictures in the air. You can't follow every word, but the rhythm lulls you anyway. He's telling the story of Dido, founder of Carthage, cleverer than any king, braver than most gods. Historians still argue where myth ends and memory begins, but the people here don't seem to mind. To them, Dido is not a question mark. She's a heartbeat. She's here, in the walls and the figs and the distant sea. As the story rises and falls, you close your eyes again for a moment. The sea is not far. Neither is sleep. You meander away from the storyteller's square, the melody of his words still swirling in your ears like incense smoke in temple air. Your path now takes you through the quieter districts of Carthage, the residential zones where life was, and in some ways still is, lived one gentle errand at a time. Here, the stone paving softens into compacted earth. Homes are more modest. No grand courtyards or merchant stalls. Just low, whitewashed walls, wooden doors weathered by sea air, and the occasional pot of basil leaning toward the sun like it's gossiping with the neighbors. You pause at one threshold, peeking in. A young boy is sweeping the entryway while an older woman, likely his grandmother, sits on a low stool threading beads onto a string. Not gold or glass, but dried olive pits and ceramic fragments, smoothed over time into something quietly beautiful. She notices you and gives a nod that seems to say, yes, this is important. Yes, this matters too. In Carthage, even trash can become an heirloom. You continue on, noting how cleverly the houses are arranged. They cluster tightly, not out of chaos, but cooperation. Shared walls mean shared shade. In hot climates, that's a kind of kindness. And the rooftops? Flat, accessible, often filled with potted plants and drying laundry and the odd cat sunbathing like it owns the city. Which, of course, it probably does. You make your way up a narrow staircase tucked between two homes. At the top, you find yourself on one of those rooftops, uninvited but unbothered. The view is modest, no sweeping cityscape, but lovely in its intimacy. Smoke rises from a nearby chimney. A child's voice sings softly from somewhere below. You spot a pair of sandals left beside a basket of dried dates. Someone's snack or someone's offering. Could be both. Historians still argue about the daily life of Carthaginian commoners. Most of the records focus on elites, generals, merchants, the politically inconvenient, but this rooftop with its cracked urn and humble piece, this feels more honest. A breeze nudges a row of laundry, and a pair of linen trousers flap suddenly into your face. You apologize. They do not forgive you. It's fine. You make your way down again, weaving through alleys where walls are close enough to touch both sides at once. There's graffiti here, ancient scrawls etched into plaster. Names, prayers, what looks suspiciously like a very bad drawing of a horse. You admire it like a museum piece. Somewhere, that long-dead artist is probably proud. You pass a public oven next, a communal bakery. Really? In cities like this, not everyone had a private oven. Families would bring their dough here, marked with little clay tokens to identify their loaf. The baker, always up before dawn, always in a mood, would bake each one and return it later. The system was foolproof, except when someone forgot their token or tried to swap for a bigger loaf, which naturally happened often. The baker greets you with a flour-dusted wave. The air smells of toasting grain and heat and a hint of smoke. You don't realize how hungry you are until a little girl skips past with a warm roll in hand. You watch the steam rise from the crust like some holy spirit of carbohydrate. You resist the urge to ask for a bite. Barely. A short walk brings you to a small courtyard, shaded by date palms. In the center, a shallow well reflects the sky like a coin dropped in by the gods. A few residents gather here, chatting in soft tones, drawing water in ceramic jars with ropes that creak familiarly. It's a peaceful place, a domestic place. And this is what we fight for kind of place. A mother hushes her baby, who is more interested in grabbing a nearby chicken than being comforted. You and the chicken make nervous eye contact. It blinks slowly and resumes pretending to be a pebble. Just past the courtyard is a small shrine. Not grand like the Temple of Tanit, but personal. A wooden figure set into a niche, flanked by sprigs of rosemary and a worn dish of oil. You light a stick of incense from the communal pile. No one stops you. The smoke curls upward, slow and gray, as if it has nowhere better to be. As you walk, you consider the weight of these ordinary lives. We think of ancient cities as all battles and statues and laws. But Carthage, like every home, was built on small things. Who fetched water? Who baked the bread? Who fixed the sandals? These quiet rhythms were the real foundation, and somehow they still echo through stone and wind and the occasional slightly judgmental cat. A vendor sits cross-legged near a wall, selling combs and little flasks of scented oil. He waves you over and offers a sample. The oil smells of crushed laurel and something sharp. Maybe cedar? You dab a bit on your wrist. The scent clings like memory. Historians still argue about Carthaginian grooming habits. Some suggest they were famously fragrant, obsessed with oils and lotions. Others say that's just Roman slander disguised as envy. But judging by the number of perfumed merchants, bathhouses, and cosmetic artifacts found in the ruins, let's just say Carthage probably smelled better than most of us today. You thank the vendor, who nods solemnly as though you've just agreed to an unspoken pact. Perhaps you have. Evening edges in slowly, coloring the walls with amber. Lamps begin to glow behind windows, one by one, as if the stars are starting from the ground up. You sit at the edge of a fountain now, its water trickling in soft loops. The sky turns honey gold above you. You close your eyes and listen, not for noise, but for presence. Laughter, footsteps, the murmur of a city preparing for sleep. In the quiet, Carthage exhales. And so do you. Night begins to settle gently over Carthage, and with it comes a slower rhythm. The streets, once bustling with chatter and cartwheels creaking over stone, now murmur instead of shout. Lamps flicker to life, their oil-fed flames glowing like sleepy eyes along alleyways and balconies. The heat of the day fades into the walls, and a cooler breeze curls in from the sea. You follow that breeze west, where the scent of salt begins to mix with wood smoke. Ahead lies the residential port district, not the grand naval docks of military might, but the quieter, everyday end of the harbor. Here, fishermen mend their nets by lamplight, and children throw pebbles into the shallows while pretending they're ancient coins destined to summon sea gods. A stray dog trots past you, tail wagging like it's got secrets. You consider following it, but your path curves instead toward a long, low structure at the edge of the quay. It's a fish saltery, essential to Carthaginian commerce, but maybe not ideal for anyone trying to breathe deeply. Inside, rows of amphorae and clay vats bubble faintly with brine. The sharp tang of fermenting anchovies hits your nose like a surprise quiz. You pause, cough once, and press onward like the brave soul you are. Historians still argue how exactly the famed Carthaginian fish sauces were prepared. Some claim intricate family recipes passed down for generations. Others suggest it was more or less throw in the fish guts and wait. Either way, it worked. Carthage exported this pungent gold across the Mediterranean, flavoring dishes from Numidia to Naples. The sultry workers glance up at you. One gives a lazy wave with a hand crusted in sea salt. Another tosses a fish head to a pelican waiting by the door like it owns stock in the place. You nod, taking in the quiet industry, the kind of labor that smells awful but pays well. Or at least well enough. You step back outside, relieved for the open air and the sound of waves gently slapping against the stone pier. The sea has turned ink black now, scattered with stars and lantern light. Boats bob gently, moored close together like a floating village. You spot one family eating dinner on the deck, bread, olives, something grilled and steaming. They're not talking much, just eating slowly, watching the sea like it's telling a story only they can hear. You pass a fisherman packing away his catch. He's old, sea-worn, sun-browned, with hands like driftwood. He catches your eye and holds up a tiny, silver fish, wagging his eyebrows as if to say, "Dinner." You smile politely and decline. He shrugs, tosses it into a basket, and resumes his silent ritual. There's a soft clanking nearby, someone loading amphory onto a donkey cart. The cart is lopsided. The donkey looks mildly annoyed, and the driver sings under his breath in a voice that could scare away seagulls. You find it oddly comforting. At the far end of the dock is a warehouse, its doors wide open. Inside are bales of dyed wool, blocks of incense resin, bolts of linen from Egypt, and even, tucked high on a shelf, a small crate of glass beads from somewhere far to the south. These are the treasures of Carthaginian trade. Not gold or gems, but the quiet wealth of fabric, spice, and scent. You touch a bolt of dyed indigo cloth, marveling at the color. It's rich and deep, like twilight wrapped in velvet. Historians still argue how accessible such dyes were, whether they adorned the nobility alone or trickled down to the merchant classes. Regardless, you imagine someone walking the streets in a robe this shade, turning heads just by existing. A voice behind you clears its throat. You spin, guiltily, like a child caught in a stranger's pantry. But it's just a sleepy warehouse clerk, scratching his beard and mumbling about inventory. He waves you off with a shrug. No harm done. You make your way back to the water, sitting down at the edge of the quay where a bundle of fishing nets makes a surprisingly decent pillow. The stones are warm from the day and the sea air softens everything it touches. You stretch out, watching boats drift like dreams across the dark water. Above you, stars flicker into view one by one. Carthage never gets completely quiet. The lull of waves, the occasional shout from a sailor, a distant clatter of hooves. But it does get slower. Sleepier, softer. You hear a soft splash and look over to see a boy skipping stones badly but with great conviction. His sister corrects his stance with exaggerated authority. Their laughter skips farther than the stones ever could. Farther along the dock, a small group of women sit weaving baskets by lantern light. Their fingers move with the rhythm of old stories, their conversation quiet but quick. Every now and then, one laughs and the others pretend not to smile. The lantern casts their shadows across the quay, long, swaying silhouettes dancing silently against the stones. The dog from earlier appears again, now carrying what looks like half a figure. It trots past like it's won a prize. It probably has. You lie back now, arms behind your head, the sky wide above. You let your thoughts drift like the tide, out toward sea routes and ships, back toward quiet courtyards and incense smoke. This city was built to be a bridge between worlds, between cultures, between people and the gods they hoped were listening. And here you are, right in the middle of it. You stir slightly as the scent of the sea fades, replaced by the distant fragrance of roasting grains and damp earth. Carthage is still awake, barely. The harbor dreams behind you now as you wander inland once more, away from the soft slap of waves and toward one of the city's most curious features. It's underground. Not the sewers, thankfully. You're not that brave. But rather, the storied cisterns, the great subterranean water reservoirs that whispered of Carthage's ingenuity. They lie hidden beneath modest plazas and colonnades, cool and echoing like quiet lungs breathing under stone. You find the entrance behind an ivy-covered wall, obscured more by time than intent. A low arch leads you into shadow. The temperature drops almost immediately, wrapping around your shoulders like a damp cloak. You descend, feet echoing faintly, until you're standing beneath an arched vault that could fit a ship sideways. It smells of old rain, limestone, and the kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. Historians still argue whether these were solely for storing water, or also served as emergency refuges during siege. The truth? Probably both. Practicality and paranoia have always gone hand in hand, especially in cities that have seen war. The walls glisten faintly in the lamplight. Somewhere, water drips at a slow, steady pace like the ticking of an ancient clock. You listen. Drip. Drip. It's oddly soothing. A kind of liquid lullaby. You run your hand along the stones. They're smooth in some places, jagged in others, carved with inscriptions that time has half erased. One marking resembles a fish, another a pair of crossed lines. Symbols or doodles? Maybe both. After all, someone once had to wait down here. And boredom is a powerful artist. A bat flutters overhead and you duck automatically. It doesn't care about you. It has bad things to do. You explore further. The cistern opens into a network of smaller chambers, some dry, some shallowly flooded. You step carefully, splashing just a little. Your foot hits something that shifts and rolls. A long-abandoned amphora, half buried in silt. You nudge it with your toe. It doesn't explode. Probably a good sign. You pause in one chamber where the ceiling is particularly high. It curves like the hull of an upside-down ship. You can almost picture Carthaginian engineers standing here centuries ago, holding plans in oil-stained hands, arguing over arch angles and the strength of mortar. One likely yelled something like, "It won't hold." And another replied, "Trust me, it's Carthaginian." And yet, here it still stands. Quiet, functional, and very slightly spooky. You finally ascend the stairs again, blinking as daylight, or at least dusklight, greets you. The air smells warmer up here. The buzz of insects returns. You emerge beside a grove unexpected and lovely. Olive trees twist toward the dimming sky, their leaves silver-green in the low light. Beneath them, beeswax candles in terracotta dishes left beside simple offerings. A few figs, a crust of bread. One small, carved bone, smoothed at the edges. The grove seems sacred, but not solemn. It's the kind of place where someone might whisper a hope, not a demand. You sit beneath one of the trees and lean back, letting the branches frame the stars just beginning to appear. Carthaginians, like many ancient peoples, blended religion into the very rhythms of their day. To them, the divine wasn't some distant thunderbolt thrower. It was in the oil you rubbed into your skin, the bread you broke at noon, the fish sauce you regretted at midnight. You rise and begin to walk again, now moving toward a quieter residential quarter. One where the lamps glow softer, and the doorways sit lower, more personal. The cobbles beneath your feet are worn with years of footsteps, each one etching a life into the city. You pass a door slightly ajar. Inside, a family is preparing for bed. A woman pours water from a clay jug. A man hangs a reed mat near the entrance. A child murmurs about dreams of dolphins. You don't intrude. You just listen. A little farther along, you hear singing. Not professional, not perfect, just soft, wordless humming. You turn a corner and spot an elderly woman sitting on her stoop, knitting something complicated by feel alone. She nods at you, but doesn't stop the tune. It's not for you, not exactly. It's just what she does before sleep. A lullaby for herself. The city is winding down. You come across a small courtyard filled with potted herbs, mint, rosemary, maybe even rue. Their scents drift together, green and sleepy. A clay lantern glows in the center like a tiny hearth. You sit beside it, watching the flame flicker. This is the side of Carthage that few conquerors wrote about. Not the fire, not the politics, but this private, patient peace. A city not in battle, but at rest. Historians still argue how egalitarian Carthage truly was. Some describe rigid hierarchies. Others point to evidence of merchant families, freed people, and even women in positions of religious authority. The truth, as always, lies in the middle, or perhaps in these little pockets of unrecorded life where everyone gets to just be. A bell chimes somewhere in the distance, deep, slow, comforting. A signal for curfew, maybe? Or prayer? Or just the city's way of saying, enough for today. You stretch, letting the tiredness settle into your limbs. Carthage breathes around you, stone and wind and memory. You aren't just walking through history anymore. You're walking with it. The path forward narrows, winding between adobe walls and quiet terraces. The night deepens, velvet-like now, and Carthage leans into sleep with you. Even the insects seem gentler in their chorus, and the occasional owl call sounds more like a yawn than a warning. You tread lightly, feeling like a guest among dreams. You're now in what historians believe was once a mixed artisan district. Here, among low courtyards and narrow lanes, lived the lifeblood of Carthaginian craftsmanship, the potters, the weavers, the metalworkers, and the perfumers who made the city's wealth not only tangible but intoxicating. The first scent that finds you is resinous, frankincense, maybe. It clings faintly to the plaster walls like memory. The second is musky, earthy, and floral all at once. You follow it toward a tucked-away workshop with no sign, just a faded blue door barely ajar. Inside, shelves upon shelves of clay vessels, some stoppered with wax, others open like little mouths waiting to speak. You step closer, breathing in rose, myrrh, cinnamon, and something citrusy and strange. Possibly bitter orange, possibly something far rarer. The artisan who works here is long gone for the night, but their traces linger in every swirl of oil and powder. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian perfumes rivaled those of Egypt or Greece. But you know one thing for certain, this little shop could knock you flat with one whiff. You continue on, passing a potter's yard where fragments of fired clay crunch under your sandals. Half-formed amphorae lean drunkenly on drying racks, and a wheel sits idle beside a trough of muddy water. A stray cat watches you from a rooftop, eyes glowing like twin coins in the dark. Across the way, a loom rests under an awning, threads stretch taut and shimmering faintly in the moonlight. You touch the yarn. It's soft, dyed a dusty saffron that once came from a plant you wouldn't notice unless someone told you it was worth its weight in silver. Carthage was a city of traders, yes, but also makers. Of delicate things, practical things, things meant to last, and things meant to be gone in a blink, like incense smoke. You stop beside a carved lintel bearing the faint impression of a stylized palm tree. A symbol of renewal, a sign that whoever lived here believed in starting again and again, season after season. And you realize, for all its military power and political cunning, Carthage was, at its core, an ecosystem of daily efforts. Hundreds of hands shaping, boiling, grinding, weaving, hoping. A city held together by repetition and small perfections. You hear someone humming a low, looping tune. You follow it to a communal courtyard where an elderly man with leathery skin sits winding string around bundles of herbs. His fingers move like they've done this for decades. You don't interrupt. You just pass through, taking with you the scent of dried thyme and the echo of that sleepy melody. Further on, you reach a public fountain. It's little more than a trickle now, but the stone basin still reflects the stars. You lean in and splash a bit on your face, cool, metallic, with a hint of algae. Refreshing in the same way that drinking from a mountain stream feels like cheating modern life. The fountain bears an inscription in Punic script, and you trace the letters even though you don't understand them. They look like flowing vines or bird tracks. Someone once carved these with care. Maybe it said, "Drink and be blessed." Or, "Don't let goats near the water." Who's to say? A couple passes by, whispering quietly, arms linked. Their sandals scuff the stones in a rhythm that says they've walked this path many times. You imagine them as regulars at the weaving market, or maybe they light a candle each morning at the temple of Eshmun, god of healing. Carthage wasn't just a place of grand temples and political decisions, it was a web of habits, a rhythm of shared routines. And in this sleepy hour, you're becoming part of that rhythm. You find yourself drawn toward a low hill. The climb is short and the view from the top modest, but it grants you a glimpse of rooftops below, slate and thatch and terracotta tiles catching the starlight. A gentle wind rolls in from the sea, lifting your hair and carrying with it distant laughter, the squeak of a wheelbarrow, and a whiff of cumin from some late-night stew. Below you lies a house with an open terrace, its floor mosaic glinting faintly. The design is simple, a circle of fish swimming in a ring. You watch them swim endlessly around each other in silent porcelain seas. Historians still argue whether domestic mosaics were made by enslaved craftsmen, free artisans, or imported teams of specialists. But whoever laid these tiles, they gave the residents a tiny ocean to step across each day. You take a seat on the hillside, knees pulled in, chin resting on your arms. Around you, the city's night sounds have softened even further. A donkey brays once like a half-hearted protest. Then quiet again. There's something profoundly calming about knowing how much effort people once put into everyday beauty, into pleasing scents, symmetrical tiles, and carefully tied bundles of time. They knew life could be hard, chaotic, or short. So they made the little parts matter. And in this moment, you let that sink into your bones like the chill of stone under night air. Carthage, tired, tender, quietly industrious, wraps around you like a blanket stitched from 1,000 years. The hill slopes gently downward and you rise to follow its curve. Your steps are slow now, not from weariness exactly, but from a kind of reverence. Carthage is quieter than ever. You feel like you're moving through the lungs of the city, breathing in the rhythm of its rest. At the base of the hill lies one of the city's less visited gems, an old, partially buried theater. Unlike the grand Roman amphitheaters you might picture, this one is humbler, built not for spectacle, but for song and dialogue, tiny dramas spoken under the stars. You sit on a worn stone bench, still faintly warm from the day's sun. The semicircle of seating rises around you like a stone hug. At the center, the stage is empty but alive with echoes. You hear them if you listen just right, shreds of monologue, forgotten laughter, the shuffle of sandals on sand-covered boards. Historians still argue whether this particular structure was used for formal performances or more casual neighborhood gatherings. Either way, it feels sacred in its own quiet way. You can imagine someone practicing their lines here long after sunset, mouthing the words to the goddess Tanit or to a crowd of rowdy kids who just wanted a break from the fish market. You try saying something aloud. Just a word. Your own voice comes back to you, stretched and softened. It sounds sleepier than you remember. Good. You leave the theater behind and find yourself meandering toward what appears to be a kind of communal oven space. An outdoor nook with blackened stones, broken bread paddles leaning against the wall, and traces of ash in the cracks. It's long cold now, but you can almost feel the bustle it once held. Women kneading dough, old men arguing over whose olives were better, children dodging between legs trying to steal hot flatbread. The Carthaginian diet, surprisingly rich and varied, is something scholars still debate over. Olive oil, of course. Wheat, barley, figs. But there are records, sketchy and scattered, hinting at chickpea fritters, honeyed dates, and even a fermented fish sauce that smells like regret and tastes like pride. You probably try it once and never again. You brush your hand over a patch of baked clay that's smoother than it should be. A palm print, maybe? Or just the wear of 1,000 hands before yours. Either way, it grounds you. A few steps further on, a small alcove reveals itself, a tiny Carthaginian shrine carved into the side of a sandstone wall. It's unassuming. You almost miss it. But the offerings, pebbles, dried flowers, one carved wooden fish tell you it still matters to someone. The figurine in the niche is weathered, possibly a fertility goddess, possibly a household spirit. Either way, she's smiling. Or maybe smirking. The line between the divine and the sarcastic was always thin in ancient cities. You pause here, not out of fear or obligation, but respect. You close your eyes and murmur something, maybe a wish, maybe a thank you. Or maybe just hello. The streets now are nearly deserted, but not unfriendly. Lamps glow faintly from inside shuttered homes, casting light through wooden slats in rhythmic stripes. The shadows dance lazily across your path, like the city itself is drifting off. A gentle breeze brings you the sound of waves again, and you realize you've looped back toward the edge of the city. Not the military harbor this time, but the public one. A gentler, less guarded bay with fewer stone walls and more wooden piers. You wander down toward the water. The sand crunches underfoot. To your left, fishing boats bob softly, anchored with ropes that creak like old knees. One of them has a name painted in Punic script, now half-faded. Maybe it once meant fortune, or hope, or don't borrow my boat without asking. You sit at the end of a pier, legs dangling over the side. The water laps at the pilings below. Something small swims past. A silver fish, quick and glinting, then gone. Carthage isn't just ancient. It's alive in ways that defy the museums and textbooks. You've felt it in stone and steam, in oven ash and in the breeze off the sea. You pull your cloak, well, your imagination of one, around your shoulders and gaze up. The sky is absolutely thick with stars now. No light pollution, no cars. Just the sweep of the heavens as it looked thousands of years ago, when sailors steered by them, when priests read omens in their patterns, and when children made up stories that shaped empires. Historians still argue whether Carthaginian astronomy rivaled that of Babylon or Egypt. But in this moment, lying back on sun-worn planks with the stars above and the harbor breathing below, it doesn't matter. The universe is endless, and Carthage once charted it from right here. You spot Orion. Or what might be Orion. You were never great with constellations. But that cluster over there? That could definitely be the lazy merchant. Or the guy who ate too many figs. You smile, feeling small in the best possible way. There's a last boat unloading down the beach. You hear a low thump, the clink of amphorae, and quiet laughter between workers. They're finishing their day as you near the end of your long, dreamy walk. You close your eyes and listen to the rhythm of it all: water, wind, the soft scuff of sandals, and a city that, though long fallen, is still, in some way, gently awake. By now, the stars are fully stitched into the sky, and the air is cool just enough to raise tiny goosebumps along your arms. But instead of turning back, you follow a narrow lane that seems to meander uphill, tucked between rows of quiet homes and sun-bleached walls. You've walked long tonight, but Carthage keeps offering you just one more path, one more detail. You pass a series of low stone benches beneath a creeping fig vine. There's something oddly comforting about how mundane they are, just resting spots, shaded during the day, warm from the sun. You picture merchants taking a break, gossiping about olive prices or how the Phoenician shipment is late again. Always is. Just ahead, there's a wider plaza, empty now but marked by faded lines in the cobblestones. Possibly for market stalls, possibly for games. Historians still argue whether children used this space for something like hopscotch or an early version of chess with animal-shaped tokens. The smoothest stones seem to have been touched a lot by play or barter, or prayers murmured while waiting in line for fish. At the far edge of the square is an oddly elegant building, part stone, part timber, its entrance flanked by delicately painted pillars. You step inside what turns out to be a public bath. There's no steam anymore, no chatter, but the geometry of the place is still beautiful. Rooms arranged in a series, warm, then warmer, then hot, followed by a cold plunge. Even ruins whisper their blueprints. You move through the bathhouse slowly. A cracked mosaic of dolphins and reeds guides your feet. The warm room smells faintly of old limescale and some ancient herbal oil long absorbed into the stone. You can still imagine the Carthaginians lounging here, towels wrapped casually, arguing politics or pretending not to snoop on their neighbors' conversations. Some things never change. You press a hand to one of the warmest remaining stones, smooth as bone and slightly hollowed where thousands must have done the same. It's oddly intimate, this touch across time. Outside again, the breeze returns. It's cooler now and carries with it the sharp tang of citrus from a nearby grove. You follow it downhill toward a residential quarter that historians call, rather unromantically, Block G. The name may be dull, but the lives once lived here weren't. You peek into a courtyard where pomegranate trees still stand guard. One is split, revealing a riot of jewel-red seeds spilling from its belly like it couldn't keep a secret. You imagine a child once climbing that very tree to impress someone. Or maybe just to avoid chores. At the edge of the courtyard is a small water basin, no bigger than a bird bath, with a copper spout shaped like a lion's head. You lean close and hear the faintest trickle, still functioning after all this time. Carthage knew how to build things that lasted. Well, some things. The residential street leads you past a row of tiny shrines carved directly into house facades. Most are too worn to recognize, but one clearly shows a stylized fish with a crescent moon above it, a symbol of Tanit, the great goddess of the city. Protector of the people. Patron of the moon, of fertility, of change. Kind of a big deal. Historians still argue whether ordinary citizens worshipped Tanit out of personal devotion or social obligation. But the number of household shrines like this suggests love. Or fear. Or maybe both. Ancient faith wasn't always tidy. The homes here are smaller, more modest. Clay bricks, wooden shutters, colorful fabrics hanging like sleepy flags in the dark. You peer through one open window and glimpse a low couch, a clay lamp flickering on a shelf, and the unmistakable shape of someone asleep, curled like a question mark blanket askew. You step away quietly. Your path dips again, toward what appears to be an old storage district. Granaries, sealed cellars, cool dark spaces built to trap shade and protect the bounty of 1,000 farms beyond the city walls. You reach a heavy door wedged open by a broken amphora. Inside, sacks of grain stacked like sleeping animals, the smell of earth and dust and possibility. Carthaginian grain, durable, sweet, and slightly nutty, was once prized across the Mediterranean. In fact, some historians argue Carthage's agricultural innovation was its secret weapon. Not the ships, not the elephants, but its ability to feed armies. And neighbors. You pass a row of inscriptions etched into the wall, tallies, notes, someone's name, probably. You run your fingers across the markings and think of all the hands that did the same, checking stocks, measuring hope by the sackload. There's a ladder in one corner. You climb halfway just to see. From the loft, you spot a bundle of tools, a wooden scoop, a dried gourd, a tiny rake. Items that seem laughably simple now but once meant survival. Innovation isn't always glamorous. Outside again, the city yawns around you. Its edges fray into farmland and the dark outline of low hills. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. A star shoots overhead. You don't make a wish. You don't need to. Your steps slow even more. You've seen so much of Carthage tonight, and yet it feels like you've barely touched the surface. It's not the grand battles or political maneuvers that linger. It's the warmth in the stones, the scent of time, the sound of a string being tied just right. You pass a final threshold into a neighborhood garden. It's not on any map, but the place feels known by cats, by crickets, by time itself. A bench invites you to sit. So you do. The moon climbs higher, casting silver on fig leaves. You take a breath deeper than usual. It catches just a little in your throat, like your lungs are full of old stories. Carthage is still here, just beneath the soil and just above your heartbeat. The bench beneath you creaks ever so slightly as you shift your weight, settling in deeper. It's the sort of creak that feels lived in, not alarming, more like an old friend sighing under the weight of shared memories. All around, the Carthaginian garden stretches out in dusky quiet, a tangle of herbs and flowering bushes that seem to hum in the still air. You breathe in lavender, wild thyme, a trace of crushed mint underfoot, the kind of aromas that would make modern luxury spas weep with jealousy. And yet, this was just everyday life here. Carthaginians weren't only warriors and traders. They were deeply invested in the comforts of earth. Garden spaces like this served as both sanctuary and pharmacy. A place to pause, pray, pluck a leaf for tea, or teach a child which plant soothed a bee sting. Historians still debate whether these urban gardens were purely private, attached to wealthier homes, or whether they functioned like semi-public green spaces shared by extended families or neighborhoods. Regardless, they remind you that even ancient cities needed a soft place to land. You rise again, reluctantly, and follow the garden's winding path. It leads toward a structure that looks almost like a covered arcade. Wooden beams stretch overhead like ribs, their shadows painting slow-moving stripes across your arms. This used to be a shaded market corridor. In the daytime, it would have been chaos, vendors yelling, coins clinking, chickens dodging between customers. Now, it's like a cathedral of silence. You swear you can still hear the ghost of a man arguing about fish prices. Loud ghosts are the worst. A faded sign hangs from a beam, pictographs of oil jars, scales, and something that looks suspiciously like cheese. Carthaginians, it turns out, were early cheesemakers. Soft goat's cheese, infused with herbs and stored in clay pots, was a known export and quite possibly the original midnight snack. You continue onward and pass a section of low, curving walls, once part of a larger public